So if you follow me on Instagram, where I'm a lot more active than I am here, you'll know that recently I installed this Acumen 3-channel digital rear view mirror. And a bunch of you have been asking me for a full install video of it. And so instead of trying to squeeze everything into like a 90-second reel, I decided, all right, this will be the perfect video for YouTube. In this video, I'm gonna go through the entire install process. I'm gonna talk to you about what features this camera system has. And I'm gonna also go over the pros and even a couple of the cons with this system too. So stay tuned. So let's check out the mirror. I'm gonna go ahead, turn the truck on, and we're gonna see the camera power up. So give it just a second. There we go, Acumen. This is the M4 model. So just a quick little rundown. So they have the M4 model, which is this one. And this one is capable of 4K recording when you have a single or dual channel setup. Single meaning it just has the camera, the dash cam on the actual mirror. Dual meaning you have that plus a rear cam. That's capable of 4K. Once you go to 3-channel though, like I have, where I added a front camera down in the grill, then it becomes 1080p. But I can say for sure, because I've been running this for about 2 weeks now, that even the 1080p is super, super clear. Now, like I said, I have a 3-channel system. So right there is my rear channel. You can see my bed cover right there. Cool thing too, I can actually scroll. And so if you want to use that to where you can see in your bed too, let's say you don't have a bed cover, that works as well. But let's check out the other channels. So right there, I have front channel in the grill, rear. Here I got dash cam, front cam, and rear cam. And then let's go here. So this one is just the dash cam alone. This one records 1080p, 60 frames per second. The additional cameras like the rear view and the trail cam, they record in 1080p, 30 frames per second. This is our front trail cam. So once again on this, I have the ability to scroll so I can see right out in front of me, or I can put it down like this and get really good shots of what's directly in front of the truck. I can see things that there's no way I could see without this camera. And then boom, right back there to the rear view mirror. And Acumen actually offers a different version of this camera, which I originally was going to get. That one's called the Legend. And basically, it looks exactly the same, but the entire unit is waterproof too, because it's kind of intended more for like side-by-sides and stuff. But the cool thing is it actually has a digital 8-gang switch panel built into the screen. Now, like I said, originally I was going to get that one. I actually had that one shipped to me and I installed it. But the thing that I realized is with that one, you have to use a special mount. And when you use that mount, you can't reattach the plastic shroud up here on the windshield. And so in my opinion, it didn't look right without that shroud there. So I decided to swap that one out and get the M4 camera, because the M4 has basically all of the same features, just without that touchscreen panel. And being that I'm happy with the panel that I already have, and if I need more switches, I can always put another one right next to it, I figured, you know what? Let's just leave these switches and I'll run the M4. One thing to note though, if you don't already have switches, Acumen does make an actual switch panel that's separate from the rear view mirror. And basically it looks like mine that's down there, but the buttons themselves are actually little touchscreens too. And it's a solid state unit. So it's built a lot more like a Switch Pros unit versus like the Oxbeam ones. So if you want a high quality unit, I would definitely recommend doing that. It should be higher quality than the Oxbeam one. It's just, I already have everything wired up, so I didn't feel like going through that hassle, but it's another option for you. So now we're gonna get into the install portion, and the install to this isn't super hard, but it is time consuming and it does take a little bit of commitment. So first things first, let's check out the general installation guide. So this gives you the rundown of how everything's gonna work. But one thing to note with this that I didn't realize before I got the product is right down here, right? It says for models of Chrysler and Dodge, the yellow line must be connected to cigarette lighter, blah, 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 blah. Also, all models of Chrysler do not support time-lapse recording. So I saw that before I installed it, and I even reached out to them and I asked, hey, it says I have to plug it into the cigarette lighter. Is that true? Because if so, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have a cord running down the windshield. And they asked the engineering team and they were like, no, you're good. You can hardwire it. And so I was like, all right, sweet. And I guess I mistakenly thought that meant, okay, you can hardwire it and the time-lapse mode will then work because it's hardwired into the truck with the accessory wire and the full-time battery wire. So I assumed parking mode would work. After I had it all installed and I was having trouble with it and I called and asked, I found out that's not the case. So you can hardwire it into these trucks and everything works great. You don't need to plug it into the cigarette lighter, but being that it's still a Chrysler product, for whatever reason, it doesn't support parking mode. But I decided to keep the system and I still feel comfortable promoting the system for two big reasons. First and foremost, I had a dash cam before this that had parking mode. I had it for about 1.5 years, and honestly, I probably only looked at the parking mode footage like maybe a handful of times over that 1.5 years. And it was never even for any like legitimate reason. It was for like stupid reasons that I would pull it up. So I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Maybe it's not as important of a feature as I really thought. And the other thing too is that the pros far outweigh the cons. So it's like, yeah, my other dash cam did have parking mode, but it also didn't have 3 cameras recording at all times. It didn't have a rear camera because it had to be mounted inside the truck, and my double limo tent made it to where I couldn't see out the camera anyway. And my other dash cam wasn't a digital rear view mirror, so I couldn't actually use it like that. You know, it was always running in the background, but having that digital rear view mirror, I'm telling you, is a game changer. And then also being able to have the front trail cam here too, right there, it's awesome, you know, because especially being that the truck's pretty tall. I mean, it's sitting 9 inches taller than it was stock. There's a lot of things that disappear below that hood. And so having that camera there far exceeds the ability to have parking mode. So that's why I decided to stick with it. And I still would totally recommend this system. So looking at the wiring harness that they give us, it's nice. We already have fuse taps and we already have a ring terminal on our ground, but we're gonna change it a little bit because on the Rams, we're gonna be plugging these fuse taps into fuses that are already being used. So instead, we're gonna use what's called a piggyback fuse tap. So we're gonna cut these original fuse taps completely off, and then we're gonna attach our new piggyback fuse taps to those existing wires. And here's a little hint too, because working with the piggyback fuse taps, when I was first learning about them, I was like, what order do the fuses go in when you put them in there? You know, which one goes closest to the metal prongs and which one goes behind it? And the easiest way for me to remember is think of it as a true piggyback, meaning put your factory fuse in the spot closest to the metal prongs, the spot that's gonna be closest to going into your fuse panel, and then piggyback your secondary fuse on top of that. So now we're gonna take our yellow accessory wire and we're gonna plug that one up into fuse F33. And then we're gonna plug in the battery wire down in the bottom right in fuse F68. Now just put your ring terminal on the ground around this screw and you're good to go. So after everything's wired up, I would say go through, plug in your digital rear view mirror and plug in all the cameras, the GPS sensor, everything. Even go for a little drive with everything just hooked up to make sure everything's in working order, because the last thing you want to do is finish the whole install and then something's not working for some reason. So we're going to get started taking down the headliner right now. But one thing to note is it's going to be way, way easier if you take down basically the whole headliner. The only parts that you don't need to take down is the passenger side A-pillar and then like the center console up top where the map lights are. Everything else needs to come down because the problem is the headliner is very, very flimsy and fragile. And so if I were to just take the back portion down, problem is by the time we just get to the B pillar, it already starts creasing. And then by the time you make it to the A pillar, it's gonna really crease a lot. So word to the wise, plan on just taking the whole thing down, and I'm gonna show you how to do it right now. So we're gonna start here on the rear of the truck, and these 4 tabs that go across the back wall that say airbag, we're gonna pick out the plastic piece and hit that T20 torque screw inside there. But before we do any of that, Make sure to disconnect your battery. Anytime you're dealing with airbags, the last thing you want to do is somehow trip the system and get an airbag in your face. Once you get all those T20 Torx out of there, now we can start pulling off the C-pillar. It's a little tricky. It requires some finesse. Basically, what you're trying to do is pull the plastic down underneath the headliner material itself. Once you get it, you can see that's the tab that's up there that you need to get underneath there. And then if we look down on the side, you can see the tabs here. So you have a tab in the back portion of it, and you have a tab more closer to the front. And then the bottom portion and the top portion of the C-pillars are fastened together. Now, I tried just loosening this top portion of the C-pillar by itself, but it's not going to work. You're going to need to disconnect that from the bottom portion and take the whole top portion out. Once that's done, the next piece are these little hangers right here. So once again, pick out the little plastic tabs. There's going to be another T20 Torx hiding in there. Making our way up front, the next thing in your way is going to be the B pillar. So once again, pop out this plastic tab. Inside here, I'm pretty sure this was a 10mm bolt. And then on the bottom, we're going to repeat the process. Now that those bolts are out of there, we can go ahead and start peeling off the B pillar. So there's going to be a couple tabs in here. You're going to have to feel around a little bit. After you have those clips disconnected, the last thing in your way is going to be the actual seatbelt itself. I'm mad that I didn't really get a good clip of this, so I'm recording this after the fact. But basically, your seatbelt needs to like go up like this. And the whole point is to try to finagle that seatbelt in this rectangular channel. That's the only way you're going to be able to release the whole B pillar. So I know that's not the best video representation, but once you do it, once you're messing with it, it'll probably make sense. After you figure that out, we're moving up to the A pillar. Pop off these two plastic tabs. You got two more 10mm bolts in there. And then looking up the visor, you got two T20 Torx on this side and one T20 Torx on the other. Now that all that's done, you should be able to pull down your headliner and you shouldn't have any creases. So this next part of the install is where it takes a little bit of commitment, and that's gonna be mounting your camera up here. Now, you don't have to mount it there. Acumen actually recommends mounting it like somewhere by the license plate or something like that, but we already have a regular backup camera. So I wanted to do it up there because it works as dual function. I can see into the bed of the truck if I need to, or, you know, just get a very, very wide angle bird's eye view of everything around me. And I like it a lot. Now with mounting this, there was two options. One, I could go through the third brake light, which Ram doesn't have the best reputation with those third brake lights. They tend to leak a lot. Or I can mount it up on the shark fin. And as I was kind of mocking it up and everything, I realized, in my opinion, it looked kind of stupid putting it on the third brake light. You could try to figure out a way to mount it inside the third brake light too. I didn't go through that hassle. What I chose to do is actually mount it on the shark fin. And right now it's actually just on there with double stick 3M tape, because in my experience, that stuff's plenty strong. And then the wire itself, you're gonna see here in a second, we did have to drill into the roof. Now that hole that we drilled actually goes into the compartment where the third brake light sits, instead of just directly over the headliner. So that made me feel a little bit safer that if I were to ever get any leaks or anything like that, I'm gonna notice it in the third brake light before noticing it on the headliner. So I'm gonna show you what I did. I don't know if it's the best way to do it. I'm sure there's people out there who know of a better way, but this is just kind of where my brain took me. And it seemed to make sense. And so far it's been great. It's rained a couple times, no moisture's gotten in. I've pressure washed the truck a couple times, no moisture. So I'm pretty happy with how it is. So check out what I did. So after mocking up where I wanted the camera to go, laid some tape down, made my mark. And first things first, I'm gonna come in and drill a pilot hole with a really small drill bit. After that, I stepped up to a 5/16 drill bit. It has to be 5/16 to be able to clear the bullet connector on the wire itself. Part of the reason I use the tape is so that when I'm done, I can try to lift it up like this and get most of those metal shavings out of there without dropping down into the third brake light section. Now to start filling the hole, this is what I chose. So this is JB Weld. It's clear 2-part epoxy. I've had great results in the past using JB Weld for things that need to be weatherproof and sealed really tight. So it was kind of my go-to product when I decided to do this project. Naturally, you're gonna wanna mount your camera and get the wire down in where it needs to be. Lay another layer of tape down. That way you're just minimizing the exposure of the epoxy directly onto your paint. And this video clip is a little bit misleading. So what I actually did on the first lift of epoxy, I let it get fairly dry until it kind of got to like a rubbery consistency. And then I chose to stuff that hole with the rubbery epoxy. Then from there, I let that dry a little bit, hit it with another lift of epoxy afterwards, this time it being a little bit more runny. That way it kind of fills in those gaps in between the chunky parts. Then from there, I did another lift, this time keeping it very runny. And that way it gets in all the little holes, all the crevices. I let that harden pretty good. And then I think I even went over a couple more times with a couple more lifts just to make sure this was completely weather sealed. And I even went up underneath inside that third brake light area and I put some epoxy on the bottom side of that hole as well. So as far as I could tell, it's about as weatherproof as I could possibly get it. Once all my epoxy hardened, this was pretty much the end result. And also to make it fit a little bit better, I actually heated up the mount that the camera goes on and I kind of molded it around the shape of the shark fin just to get a little bit better adhesion between that 3M tape and the shark fin itself by following that curve. I think the placement of the camera turned out great. It looks real discreet. Now looking inside the truck, this is the wire that we just ran through that hole. It's gonna come over here. I chose to bundle up all the excess wire in this little corner because it's kind of an open spot behind the headliner. And then we just have to run our wires from back there up to the front where the dash cam connects. Just make sure, kind of follow where the factory wires go. Stay clear of anything that's gonna interfere with the airbags in any way. And then just give yourself enough slack to connect to the camera up here. So besides putting everything back together, that's the end of the rear camera install. So now we're gonna get started on the front. Now this is a little bit of foreshadowing because I'm recording this after the fact. But this is our camera in the front here. I'm gonna walk you through how I installed that and what led me to put it right there. So originally my plan was to put it on top of the A right here because that just seemed to kind of be the easiest place to get a good mounting surface for it. But the more I looked at it, the more I was just kind of like, you know what? It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb a little bit more than I wanted to. So I chose to change it up just a little bit. And this is what I chose to do. So I took the bracket completely off the light. There's just a couple screws on the backside. And I decided to mount it directly onto the grill slats. Now, the reason I chose to do that is because it just looks way more factory to me. You can see we come around here and you can hardly see that camera whatsoever, especially in person. Now to make it fit here, it required just a little bit of customization. So you can see up here, if I can get that to focus, see how there's a little hole right here? So I actually got that hole by using a Dremel tool with a sanding bit on it because this gap in the grill isn't quite big enough for the camera to sit in there. So I just had to open it up a little bit to get it to sit in there. But looking at the truck, you can't see the hole at all. Plus, you can't really see it, but by doing that hole, I was able to route the wire up through there. And so basically the wire goes in here. Oh yeah, you can see it right there. See it? So the wire goes up through there, up to the top, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like inside. So to be able to route the wires where we need to go, we're gonna have to pop these tabs off. This is just a little trim tool. It works pretty well for this. You don't need to pop this little part completely off, but if you do, it still works. So this is what we're trying to get at to be able to route our wire. So the camera's wire only goes to about where the washer fluid reservoir is. From there, we have to connect our extension harness. And that extension harness is gonna run from that connection point all the way through the engine bay, through the firewall, up the A-pillar, and into our rear view camera. And I'm gonna show you how to do that. So down here behind your brake pedal, there's a little rubber grommet here. Go up underneath there, and you're gonna take something like a straightened out metal coat hanger and stick it through that grommet until you can see it in the engine bay like this. From there, you're gonna take the male end of your extension harness and tape it to that metal hanger, and we're gonna go back in the cab and pull that coat hanger all the way through. And you can see right here, that rubber grommet is giving birth to the male end of our wire. Once you pull all that excess through, we're gonna take off this little access panel here. So as you can see, you can get it with your hands, you can do it with the trim tool. Basically, it just pops off with a couple clips, and we're gonna run that male end of the wire up our A-pillar. We're gonna get that excess out of there, run it up the A-pillar, and attach it to our camera where it needs to go. And after you determine the amount of wire you need, go ahead, bundle up all the excess, and tuck it in here nice and tight. So my camera died when I was finishing up the install on that day, but basically we're completely done. All you have to do is put your interior panels back together. But that last step of the process was basically just get all your wires up your A-pillar. I put a couple zip ties in here, and then you just route them underneath here. And this is why it's important that you take down the visor too, because that gives you a little bit more room in here. Also, another thing I didn't film, if you need more room to be able to put the wire harness, which I put the wire loom that came with the system over all 4 of the wires. If you need more room to tuck that up in there and the little wires for the GPS system as well, you can bring this down, and there's a couple screws in there. I believe they were 8mm screws. You can take those out, and that'll just give you even a little bit more room to pull this down to be able to tuck those wires up in there nice and tight. Now, one other thing too to note with this GPS monitor here, originally I did try sticking it on the plastic right here, and I wasn't getting a valid GPS signal. And so I called Acumen, and they said, no, it has to go on the windshield. And so I put it on the windshield, and sure enough, it is working now. So just a couple things to note there that'll make your install process a little bit easier. Now, the last thing is I want to show you guys how the app works. So download the Acumen app, come down to that middle one that's playback, click select, click the clip that you want to download, and it's instantly going to start downloading. Then you can head over to phone storage, and it'll show you all the clips that you've downloaded. Click them, you can scroll through. It records in 5, 10, or even 15-minute increments. There's the front cam, here's the rear cam, and then the next one's going to be the dash cam. The nice thing about this is that it records all 3 cameras simultaneously, so you get 3 views, or 2 if you have a dual channel, at all times. So there we go, guys. That's the full install and the full review of the Acumen camera system. Like I said, this is the M4 3-channel model. They have the M4, the XR10, the Legend. They got a few options, a little bit of something for everybody. I think having a digital rearview mirror is just about one of the best mods that I've done on this truck. I've gone years now basically not being able to see anything out my back window because I have double limo tint. And even during the daytime, you're basically blind. And at nighttime, forget about it. There's no chance. So having this digital rearview mirror is awesome. Having it synced up with an actual dash cam and even a front cam just makes it all that much better. And I think the biggest advantage of doing an aftermarket system like this versus doing the factory camera that Ram actually offers is that theirs doesn't record. This records, so it is a full functioning dash cam on all 3 cameras at all times, which I think that's great, because that was probably my biggest complaint with the last dash cam that I had, was that it was only a dash cam that looked through the windshield. There was no rear camera. I couldn't live view the footage that I was looking at. And this was a high-end camera too. I'm not going to say the brand, but the features that this has for the exact same price that I paid for the other one that was just a single camera, it's a no-brainer. And honestly, the video footage and quality of this one is better. It comes with a bigger memory card than the other one did. It's hard to justify getting a different dash cam when there's options like this out there that exist, because this thing's awesome. So let me know what you guys think. Hit me up in the comments if you have other questions about this, if there's anything that I didn't cover. Hopefully this answered most of the questions. If you guys got any use out of this video, whether it be for the actual dash cam or for the process of dropping the headliner and stuff like that, please consider subscribing to my channel, follow me on Instagram, and just stick along with all the mods, because I'm always doing something to this truck and it's fun sharing it with you guys, and I really enjoy making these videos. So until next time, peace.